This is a dialogue. It's not a debate.
There's no evidence.
God commanded genocide of people multiple times in the Bible.
He wants to be his own God. He doesn't want to submit to an authoritative God who created him.
They are possessed by a demon. I'm going to cast that thing out.
Is there anything your child could do that would make you want to lock him in the closet and set the house on fire?
No.
Oh, then I think Nick definitely has a better morality than your God.
Well, you ask really good questions.
We were out there 4 days later, and the guy walked out, and he had a full nose. I didn't even recognize him.
The Miracles of Atheists podcast, unpacking the tension between different worldviews of the supernatural.
And what's going on, everybody? My name is Nick Snap. Good evening, good evening. This is the Miracles of Atheists Community Call-In. I'm doing a very special deep dive edition of the Call-In show today. The Call-In stuff is actually working. Let me get that number up there for you if you are happening to watch here on this October 31st. What a spooky evening. That's why we're talking about Russia's invasion of Ukraine on this October 31st. Yeah, family doesn't celebrate Halloween. So whatever, we're here doing more important work. That's what we're all about here. So anyway, I'm doing this thing by myself tonight because I feel like there's so much more we can get into related to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. I'm convinced there's much more than meets the eye. And I want to show you some things that I've come across that you're probably not going to get from the mainstream media. And we'll let you just think for yourself and draw your own conclusions. That's really what this is all about. Hopefully we'll get so deep that we'll get kicked off of Facebook and YouTube and whatever. We have Rumble. We have Telegram. We have other platforms that don't censor you. Apparently Twitter is not censoring these days either. It's more to come on that, I guess. But anyway, what is the MACC? Well, it's a topical-based call-in show format. It's a relatively new thing for those involved with Miracles of Atheists. You can call in at 919-301-9045. I can see there in the right-hand corner. I guess it's, you're right if you look at the screen. And, this thing is designed to look at a specific topic. Most of the time, it's a controversial topic or a concern that frequently comes up in skeptic communities, and it's usually having to do with following Jesus. I like to break down the topic or concern the best I know how. I'm usually here with Jason Duramo. He's not in tonight, but what we really want to do is just attempt to provide a reasonable understanding of whatever that topic is. We want to be as objective as possible while making a conscious effort to listen, to get to the heart of the matter and seek truth. And speaking of topics, tonight we're going to talk more about Russia and Ukraine. That's right. Just didn't feel like we covered some of the stuff that I researched enough. We really got into spiritual discussions with Dan, Objectively Dan. We went over a few things with him and Alex Puck. He just went by Puck, two atheists who we had on the show last time, kind of unpacking a little bit about Russia and Ukraine, but we just went right into spiritual things, which is super interesting. But man, I did so much research that I really wanted to share with you by myself what I found and just let you take a look at it. And we'll just, we'll take calls and we'll talk about it and we'll just see how the whole thing goes. So yeah, let's see. What do we want to go into? First thing I want to do is I want to let you know that we're making a Miracles and Atheists movie. Yeah, it's crazy, right? Well, I've teamed up with director Neil Galarte of Wild Style Media, and he's flying up here to North Carolina in 2 weeks to film our next public podcast event. That's going to happen on November 12th. And that's going to be a really interesting event, too, on November 12th. We have a guy who's coming on. His name's John Farmer. He's going to talk about his daughter who had a not a fully functioning eye and how now she has a fully functional eye and that God grew this eye back. So tune in on November 12th. It's going to be 1 p.m. We're doing it from the mall here in North Carolina, the Crabtree Valley Mall. And it's from one of the stores there called Sanctuary Girl. Give a plug for Sanctuary Girl. Our friend Monica Perez Burnett owns that store with her husband, Jared. So anyway, I'll tell you more about that. But quickly about the movie. Well, this is actually going to be a documentary film. And we'll bring atheists and believers together with a common goal, and that's finding truth. And yes, I've learned from my atheist friends that truth requires proof. So what qualifies as proof that an invisible God exists? We're going to dig in together, atheist and believer, and we're going to seek truth. Is there a supernatural realm? Do miracles really happen? If so, can they be tested? We'll be traveling to cities and regions where atheism dominates, and we'll challenge people's faith, whether in God or in science or in something else. It'll be a provocative, eye-opening film that will move your heart and push you out of your comfort zone. That's the goal, at least. And we really do need some financial support to make this thing happen. So we're going to finish shooting our crowdfunding campaign in a few weeks when Neil flies up here. And if all goes as planned, we will launch this crowdfunding campaign before the end of the year. And if you want to support the film before that campaign begins, because there are expenses like, flying Neil up from Florida to North Carolina, you can go to our Patreon page. You can see that right there on the screen. It's just going to really help us get the word out about the movie. And the website is patreon.com, like you see that there, /miracles and atheists. That's Patreon, patreon.com/miracles and atheists. Really, really appreciate your support with this supernatural endeavor. It will be a wild ride faux show. Anyway, so back to the topic at hand. Take a little drink here. I'm not used to talking so much. You have a co-host next to me sharing the load of talking. Let's talk about Ukraine, Russia, the conflict. Okay, so I said this last time. We've all been paying a lot of attention lately to current events, much more than we used to. Paying attention to what's going on in the world, and it's been rather challenging to decipher truth. So here on the MACC, the Miracles and Atheists Community Call-In, we prefer to take on spiritual topics, but we can't ignore world events. Because for me, I want to seek truth. It seems there's always something behind what we're being told by the media. So what is the truth? Maybe it's just pure deception. Maybe there's a spiritual agenda behind the things that we're seeing. So I thought it'd be a ton of value. There'd be a ton of value in taking a look at current political and social events like Russia and Ukraine. So for the next hour or so, we're going to dissect the foundations behind the narratives and see what we can tease out. I like to be challenged, so please call in. We want to hear the perspectives of people who don't think like I do, especially skeptics and atheists, because you're known for being skeptical, right? And I'm hoping that you'll ask tough questions about the mainstream narratives and you'll seek the truth with us rather than just being skeptical about the existence of God. I want to see the skepticism applied to what we're being fed from the media. So I'm sure, I can say this with confidence, that no matter what our worldview, skeptic, Christian, Muslim, atheists, we all want to know what's really going on, and no one likes being lied to. So, all right, here we go. I don't know if I have any sound effects or anything like that. I got to get better at the board, but here's what I've learned from the mainstream media, right? Russia is really, really bad. Putin is a tyrannical, power-hungry dictator who wants Ukraine back at any and all costs. So he commanded a quote-unquote unprovoked invasion of Ukraine. And if you you start Googling, why did Russia invade Ukraine, you will find unprovoked invasion consistently across article. So poor Volodymyr Zelenskyy is fighting hard to save his country. He's actually participating as a soldier. You'll learn that. And or you've already learned that. And he needs money to feed, clothe, and shelter his Ukrainian people, right? Because Russia stripped them of all these basic necessities. And he's fighting so hard, he's sacrificing, to host things like galas with Sean Penn and other celebrities. And he's just an example of a brave hero that we should all try to exemplify, right? This is how we're supposed to feel about Zelenskyy. So just to kind of drive that point home, this is how we're supposed to feel about Volodymyr Zelenskyy. I'm going to play this video for you. And this is just really what it's all about. So this is going to grip you. So let's watch. Okay, so you get it? That's Zelenskyy. He's a hero, he's a war person, and that's what we're supposed to really That's how we're supposed to view Zelenskyy. All right. So here's a bit of a contrast for you now. I tried to do this with Objectively Dan and Puck last time we were on talking about Russia and Ukraine, but it bombed because of tech issues. I think I figured those out now. So I do learn. It's a free miracle that I actually do learn. I like that shirt. Yeah. So I'm going to give it another go. Many of you know that Zelenskyy is a former comedian. So there's a little humor that you might enjoy from Zelenskyy. Now, this is Ukrainian humor, so there's going to be subtitles. But just have a look at your hero. All right, here we go.
О, Рамзан Ахматович, доброго вечера. Рамзан Ахматович, я здесь.
Но я говорил уже вам, что следующая остановка в Грозном. Правильно, вы в Грозном?
Правильно говорили, я здесь. Рамзан Ахматович, простите, засранца, был глуп, был молод и горяч. В основном горяч. Рамзан Ахматович, прошу вас, возьмите меня к себе в батальон Ахмат часовым. У меня есть такая одна штучка, чудесное средство, которое позволит мне обнаружить врага везде. И когда я его увижу, я крикну: Ахмат сила! И он обосрется и убежит.
Подожди, у нас сформирован батальон Ахмат. В НАТО набирает таких, как ты. Туда иди со своим, как это, белым мукой. Там вам место, предателям.
Извините.
Что надо сказать?
Ахмат сила!
Слава!
Слава России!
Все, давай.
А мука будет?
Oh, did you guys think that was funny? He's a comedian, right? Okay, more flowers. So apparently flowers has something to do with cocaine or some sort of powder drug or something like that. So that's Zelenskyy before he became famous as a war hero and everything like that. So yeah, thought you might like that little transition, little contrast from being told about Zelenskyy. Bizarre stuff, really, really bizarre stuff. So why did Putin invade Ukraine? One thing that's interesting is why is no one really mentioning peace right now? It's all about supporting the war and funding Ukraine. I want to ask you this other question. Do you know what a think tank is? And some other things that are interesting maybe to ask, and please comment. Why has NATO expanded into 13 countries up to the border of Russia? And what do you really think? Last question. What do you really think happened in with Nord Stream 1 and 2? Y'all know what Nord Stream 1 and 2 is? It's a pipeline that was carrying natural gas to Germany. It was a Russian pipeline that was blown up, and the media is telling you that Russia blew it up. So we're going to get into some interesting things like that. So where do we start with this thing? All right, I want to just ask the question about what's the U.S. and their involvement with Ukraine? Why is the U.S. involved with Ukraine? And here's what I'm going to do. Here's what I'm going to kind of just put this out here. There's a lot of, I try to just look at things that are tangible and that you really can't deny. I mean, you could deny it if you're a skeptic. You can deny anything. You can deny that I'm even sitting here in this chair, right? I could just be imagining this whole situation. So could you. You could be a brain in a vat. But that aside, I try to put out things that are tangible. So there's a video that I want to show you. It has to do with Biden, Joe Biden, and talking specifically as Trump in 2016 was just elected. It talks about it's a conversation between Biden and then President Poroshenko. So here we go. I'm just going to play it for you, and you can decipher this for yourself.
Clean up loose ends. November 16, 2016, 2 weeks after Donald Trump's victory, Joe Biden is on the phone with Poroshenko. His voice tenser now than before.
This is getting very, very close. What I don't want to have happen, I don't want Trump to get in the position where he thinks he's about to buy onto a policy where the financial system is going to collapse and he's going to be looked to pour more money into Ukraine. That's how he'll think about it before he gets sophisticated enough to know the details.
In other words, Biden does not want Ukraine asking for more money from Trump. Doing so would cause Trump to look into the details.
So anything you can do to push the Privat Bank to closure so that the IMF loan comes forward, I would respectfully suggest is critically important to your economic as well as physical security.
All right, so who's Poroshenko? Petro Poroshenko is a Ukrainian businessman now, a politician. He served as the 5th president of Ukraine from 2014 to 2019. So he was president during the time of this conversation. And so this is an encouragement from Joe Biden to Poroshenko. And he said he didn't want number 45, the newly elected president at the time, 2016, to push any more money over Ukraine because he'd start understanding the details. What is going on with that? Why would that be an issue? He talked about the IMF as well. So what is the IMF? What's the IMF all about? The IMF, and I'll just try to get you some information so you can look at this with me here. Just again, I'm just trying to get IMF information. There's IMF.org, Ukraine, the IMF. Let's see if I can share. What is the IMF? It's an international monetary fund. All right, so when countries get in trouble, they take loans from the IMF, and then the IMF bails them out, and then they have a debt to this international monetary fund. So what is the IMF? I'm going to just go on to secular resources so you don't think that I'm trying to be as unskewed as possible. Just go to Wikipedia, because let's go to the International Monetary Funds page. Let's look what are they about here. All right, I'm going to share my screen here, and we can check that out. Present, share screen. All right, here we go. About this. All right, can you see this? There we go. So, what is the International Monetary Fund? And I'm just looking at this right there with you. A global organization established in 1944 in the aftermath of the Great Depression of the 1930s. 44 founding member countries sought to build a framework for international economic cooperation. Today, its members embraces 190 countries, with staff drawn from 150 nations. IMF is governed by and accountable to these 190 countries that make up its near global membership. So they have a board of governors, 24 member board, and they're cooperating, loaning money to 190 countries. And so did you hear that at the very end of that video here? Let's play that one more time.
Clean up loose ends. November 16, 2016, 2 weeks after Donald Trump's victory.
I won't fast forward here, but the IMF is a very important loan that was done to Ukraine. And so he's basically, again, he's saying don't receive any more money from Trump because he doesn't want him looking into figuring things out and getting savvy. So that was interesting to me. Man, so many things we can go into. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. What else we want to talk about? If you have any calls, any feedback, if you want to call in to the number there. I'd love to hear what you think about the IMF and Poroshenko and those what perceived to be threats from Biden and Poroshenko. So let's move on. U.S. involvement with Ukraine. All right, so kind of continuing along the lines of some interesting things, I want to talk about think tanks. All right, think tanks are organizations that come together and they decide they advise governments on strategies and things like that. So they're a lot of times the people from the think tanks you'll see on like CNN, and there'll be experts in certain fields, like experts on the Ukrainian war, experts on cryptocurrency, experts on central bank currency, things like that. They'll come on and they'll say, this is why we need to do what we need to do. The think tanks, they come together. So here's a think tank called the RAND Corporation. All right. Now, the RAND Corporation has actually planned out our future. They're the center of real power of the United States, and they have a lot of authority over economic, financial, and military oligarchies, and they determine the strategy for the rest of the world, and actually the war in Ukraine. And so here's something you can see specifically from the RAND Corporation. I'm going to share my screen on this one. Super interesting stuff. Let's try this. All right, here it is. We are, let me get rid of this background here. Sorry about that. I want to hide that. All right, where is that going? Okay, so this is the RAND Corporation, Objective Analysis, Effective Solutions. This is a think tank. We have an article here about overextending and unbalancing Russia. When was this? This is out, you can download this. It's at rand.org. Overextending and unbalancing Russia. When was this article written? Let's find the actual date. And there's no April 2022. Let's find the actual date of this article. I think it's at the bottom here, just so you know, or the other. I can't remember exactly when it was. There's quite a bit of detail in here. And there it is, April 24th. No, that's not it, 24th. I think it was in, I think it wasn't actually 2019 when this was actually written. So let's just kind of kick this thing off from the RAND Corporation, and you'll see what these think tanks are doing. So it's a summary report that comprehensively examines nonviolent, cost-imposing options that the United States and its allies could pursue across economic, political, and military areas to stress, overextend, and unbalance Russia's economy and armed forces and the regime's political standing at home and abroad. Some of the options examined are clearly more promising than others, but any would need to be evaluated in terms of the overall U.S. strategy for dealing with Russia, which neither the report or this brief attempted to do. So this whole article is the RAND Corporation, a think tank, who put together this strategy, I believe it was in 2019, to unbalance Russia. And what this is doing, it's talking about how Russia's vulnerable in many areas, you can see. I wish I could get this a little larger here. Let's see. Try to share my screen a different way here. Sorry about that. And let me try to share this one more time a different way. Share screen. Talk about think tanks, the RAND Corporation. All right. Here we go. Let's try screen 2. Nope, screen 3. Here we go. All right. Not better? Nope, not better. Oh, sorry about that. Full screen layout. Here we go. That's what I was trying to do. All right. So it talks about Russia's vulnerabilities. It talks about Russia remains a powerful country. It still manages to be a U.S. peer competitor in a few key domains. It talks about the economic cost-imposing measures the U.S. could put on Russia. Seems to be an interference with the sound. I'm getting a, the sound isn't going to be too good. I'm getting a comment here that sound must be messed up here. Sorry about that. Not sure what to do about that right now, but I'll turn it down a little bit. All right, so here's what the U.S. could do. Expand U.S. energy production. They can impose deeper trade and financial sanctions. It can increase Europe's ability to import gas from suppliers other than Russia. All right, so this import gas from suppliers other than Russia. So it's trying to take away Russia. The recommendation is to take Russia's gas away from Europe. This is to, again, this whole think tank article, publicly available, overextending and unbalancing Russia You can just go into your search engines and look up RAND Corporation overextending and unbalanced Russia. All right, so they can encourage the immigration from Russia of skilled labor and well-educated youth. And then it goes into the analysis, providing lethal aid to Ukraine. So this was way before the Ukraine war. This was in 2019. This RAND Corporation is recommending to provide lethal aid to Ukraine. This would exploit Russia's greater point of external vulnerability. Any increase in U.S. military arms and advice to Ukraine would need to be carefully calibrated to increase the cost of Russia of sustaining its existing commitment without provoking a much wider conflict in which Russia, by reason of proximity, would have significant advantages. It now goes into Syria, Belarus, reducing Russian influence in Central Asia. And it talks about ideological and informational cost imposing measures, diminishing faith in the Russian electoral system. This would be difficult because of state control over most media sources. So I don't know, what does that mean to you all, but to me it looks like interference with Russia's electoral system by the U.S. Creating the perception that the regime is not pursuing the public interest. This could focus on widespread, large-scale corruption and further challenge the legitimacy of the state. It's hard to assess whether political volatility and protests would lead to a more extended Russia. Wow. Encourage domestic protests and other nonviolent resistance, undermining Russia's image abroad. Undermining Russia's image abroad. So this would focus on diminishing Russian standing and influence, thus undercutting regime claims of restoring Russia to its former glory. So sanctions on things like boycotting the World Cup. This could be implemented by Western states who damage Russian prestige. So this is a think tank. Air and space cost imposing measurements. It just goes into the whole ordeal. And how much of this are we seeing right now? So this is from the United States. This article was written way before the invasion of Ukraine. Interesting stuff, right? So you can read through this, RAND.org, and again, you can look up overextending and unbalancing Russia. Wow. All right, so that being said, so if you remember, I talked about the oil getting Europe off of Russian gas. And that might be a pretty good segue to talk about Nord Stream 1 and 2. All right, so this is really super interesting, and I don't know if you've heard about Nord Stream 1 or 2. So with the think tank, I mean, we go into all those different categories, but I'll just kind of show you how this is playing out right in front of our eyes. Before we get into the gas, let's talk about the color revolution. All right, this is goes along the lines of what we were talking about earlier, where you push a certain ideology. So I want to play for you another cool video. This is actually from Oliver Stone. It's a clip from the Oliver Stone movie, and that movie is called. What was that called? Let me look at this real quick. Oliver Stone, yeah, it's called Ukraine on Fire. All right, so here's a clip. It's called The Color Revolution, and you'll watch this about 2 minutes long. So check this out.
Veiled and masked as the color revolutions can be, an attentive viewer can see subtle patterns and similarities revealing their true nature. To make crowds act as one obedient group, they have to be united at the unconscious level. The masterminds of color revolutions know this well and have perfected the art. Symbolism is one of the most powerful tools to achieve this end. Revolutionary political organizations with surprisingly similar names and even more similar logos have appeared time and again, almost as omens marking the countries that would be hit by the colored plague next. They are often described as being aware and active, when they're actually trained and radical. They are the ones who take the first shot, literal and metaphorical, to transform the peaceful protests into full-blown coups d'etats. Their fingerprints can be found everywhere on the map of the color revolutions. Using all the experience of past generations, simple but effective tools like catchy sing-alongs and chanting are employed. Well known for exciting the crowd and creating a group identity, they depersonalize individuals and make them easier to manipulate.
Конечно, без денег здесь не могло быть. Такое количество не государственных, различных общественных организаций, грантов, которое выделялось на Украину, это не есть секретом.
Incidentally, one such organization, Hromadske TV, received generous donations from the Dutch and U.S. embassies, as well as from the Renaissance Foundation, an NGO founded by George Soros.
I set up a foundation in Ukraine before Ukraine became independent of Russia. And the foundation has been functioning ever since. And it played an important part in events now.
So what do you think about that? Color revolution, it's kind of like we've seen this over and over again. We don't really know what's going on, what's driving it. Very interesting they're doing. Obviously in Ukraine, there's vested interest in trying to make this, try to get people interested in what's going on and peaceful protests that turn violent. We've seen these before, and I'm sure you guys have heard about Soros and some of the things with them that have happened in the U.S. So it doesn't really, it's not just Soros, but there's also characters that have really want to push a narrative in the government with Ukraine. And one that comes to mind specifically, you can see this kind of play out in the discussions specifically about Ukraine and trying to figure out like what sort of ideology that they want the public in Ukraine to get excited about. So you saw some of those symbolism, obviously, but then you saw some of the catchy chants, and if you're not jumping, then you're Russian, and those sort of things that were coming about. So I'll go into Secretary Nuland. She has some interesting audio. I'll try to give you some background here if I can. Color, just overall color, the color revolution, it's really a simple kind of overall methodology, right? This is something that you're going to see play in with some audio, but in my opinion, that this was really what playing out right in front of the Secretary Nuland. But the color revolution, it's to instigate and manipulate a frenzied mob around simplistic demands to accomplish whatever geopolitical goals are intended. So this is ousting the president, overthrowing government, creation of chaos, provoking to war. The color represents, it refers to how a single color, a symbol, or a slogan, or a demand is promoted and repeated to inflame passion and retard reason. This is color revolution. So how you can use a single color, symbol, slogan, or demand to promote and inflame passion. So you repeat it over and over and over again. So with Ukraine, it was the orange revolution. Just to understand more completely what's going on today, you need to understand the orange revolution. And so really what it is, and this is, you can look it up yourself, you can disagree with what I'm saying, but it's about the existence of militant Nazis in the region and the desire of rich oligarchs to join Western European allies. So many people don't realize that the majority of Ukrainian people actually don't want to join the Western powers. This is where the consent of the governed is being ignored, and the agenda of the few rich oligarchs is being thrust upon the masses. And so the Nazis in Ukraine, and it's been documented, there are real life Nazis in Ukraine. They're just kind of the muscle behind putting this all through. So we talked about some of the uprising and things that happened. This is all in the Orange Revolution took place actually in 2014. And so the legitimacy of the election that took place, I guess in 2014, I think it was actually 2004, there was an election between Viktor Yanukovych, a pro-Russian candidate from southeastern Ukraine, and he actually lost a contested election to Viktor Yushchenko, who was initially declared the winner. So the Orange Revolution challenged that, and it was following allegations of the results of that election in Ukraine, and that's what became known as the Orange Revolution. So I'm going to play some related audio from Secretary Nuland, and it has to do with how they're going to play this out and how they're sort of meddling in this Ukrainian situation. And so there's all kinds of things that happen here, but I'll just play it for you and you can let me know what you think. All right, here we go. This is Victoria Nuland. And
what do you think?
I think we're in play. The Klitschko piece is obviously the complicated electron here, especially the announcement of him as deputy prime minister. And you've seen some of my notes on the troubles in the marriage right now, so we're trying to get a read really fast on where he is on this stuff. But I think your argument to him, which you'll need to make, I think that's the next phone call we want to set up, is exactly the one you made to Yachts. And I'm glad you sort of put him on the spot on where he fits in this scenario. And I'm very glad he said what he said in response.
Good. So I don't think Klitsch should go into the government. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you think, what, in terms of him not going into the government, just let him sort of stay out and do his political homework and stuff. I'm just thinking in terms of sort of the process moving ahead, we want to keep the moderate Democrats together. The problem is going to be Tony Book and his guys. And, you know, I'm sure that's part of what Yanukovych is calculating on all of this.
I think Yachts is the guy who's got the economic experience, the governing experience. He's the guy, you know, what he needs is Klitsch and Tony Book on the outside. He needs to be talking to them 4 times a week. You know, I just think Klitsch going in, he's going to be at that level working for Yatsenyuk. It's just not going to work.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. Okay. Good. Well, do you want us to try to set up a call with him as the next step?
My understanding from that call, but you tell me, was that the big three were going into their own meeting and that Yachts was going to offer in that context a three-way, you know, 3+1 conversation or 3+2 with you. When I talked to Jeff Feltman this morning, he had a new name for the UN guy, Robert Seri. Did I write you that this morning?
Yeah, I saw that.
He's now gotten both Seri and Ban Ki-moon to agree that Seri could come in Monday or Tuesday.
Okay.
So that would be great, I think, to help glue this thing and have the UN help glue it. And, you know, fuck the EU.
all right, I'll play one more for you from Newland, and we'll go into this a little bit more.
Let me work on Klitschko, and if you can just keep, I think we want to try to get somebody with an international personality to come out here and help to midwife this thing. And then the other issue is some kind of outreach to Yanukovych, but we probably regroup on that tomorrow as we see how things start to fall into place.
So on that piece, Jeff, when I wrote the note, Sullivan's come back to me VFR saying you need Biden, and I said probably tomorrow for an attaboy and to get the deeds to stick. So Biden's willing.
All right, so Biden's willing. So who's this Pilot guy? While I was talking to him about this, so Pilot was he's a United States diplomat, served as Assistant Secretary of State for Energy Resources. Now, he was previously the United States ambassador to Greece and Ukraine. So as we're talking through here, why did Newman say that about the EU, what was going on during that time? But you can see they're setting up characters. So Klitsch, he was a famous boxer in Ukraine, a celebrity that they recognized could get people to sort of rally around their cause. That's what we're talking about, getting him involved, and there's other characters and things that they said, well, they need to get together, Klitsch and this other guy. We need to get together and talk 4 times a week, which is interesting, right? Why is the U.S. dictating how the Ukrainian boxer needs to be talking to other Ukrainian extremists, the other person, I can't remember his name now. I'll probably get it for you in a second here, but you know, why was that important for them to do? Why do they need to talk regularly? Why was the U.S. involved with that? So What's up with the EU thing? So in 2014, I think it was February 20th, 2014, the president of the American Chamber of Commerce for Ukraine, the president of the American Chamber of Commerce, present for Ukraine, Bernard Casey, he says on February 20th, 2014, an EU delegation moderated negotiations between then President Yanukovych and the protesters, agreeing to early elections. That was, I'm getting ahead of myself here, sorry about that. Well, so the whole thing that Nguyen said about the EU, she said she did not approve of the EU negotiations and compromise. They obviously wanted to, for the UN to glue their agenda together. There was protesters escalating, but it was the EU itself was Ukraine was the president of Ukraine was trying to make a deal to postpone an agreement with the EU, and the United States didn't like that, and they created this this uprising because of it. So get some more details here for the EU. Sorry about this, guys. The notes are a little bit scattered here. And protest. So what they were demanding was that NATO and EU intervene. That NATO and the EU intervene. I don't want to speak out of turn here, but it had to do with a disagreement. So that's really what happened. And you can just tell that the United States was dictating how they were going to add fuel to that fire of that protest. The point of what I'm saying is that the U.S. was interfering with very specific Ukrainian government negotiations with the EU. All right. What else do we have? Nord Stream 1 and 2. The Nord Stream 1 and 2 is a pipeline that was recently blown up by underwater explosives. And there's a plausible narrative. This is what you'll see here if you're looking at what the mainstream media might tell you about what happened with Nord Stream 1 and 2. Here we go. So there's a new round of U.S. sanctions on Nord Stream 2 was proposed earlier in June in the effort of the U.S. administration to prevent increasing Europe's energy dependence on Russia. So you learned that from the Rand Corporation, right? If you remember right, that was one of its strategies. That was in 2019, I believe. And this just happened this past summer, where we lost that. Well, this is actually in 2020. This article was written in 2020. So this is just after that, actually. So Germany and EU countries cannot abandon Nord Stream 2, but the U.S. wanted, that's the motivation of the U.S. wanted to prevent the increased energy dependence on Russia. So if you just go just to a search engine and you say, who exploded Nord Stream 2? What happened? Who blew up the Nord Stream pipelines? Let's just go to Reuters, because everybody trusts Reuters, right? Who's being blamed and why? All right. So, as probed by European authorities continue, Swedish security police on Thursday have suspicions of gross sabotage in the pipelines that have been threatened following a crime scene investigation. Russia's foreign, so they're saying the Danes also carry an investigation. Russia's foreign ministry said on Thursday it was unthinkable that an investigation into ruptures of Nord Stream 1 and 2 gas pipelines would proceed without Moscow's participation. So it's unthinkable. So what they're saying is Russia blew up their own pipeline. Western governments and officials have avoided pointing a finger directly, while Russia has blamed the West. So Russia's blaming the West, and the West is saying that Russia blew up their own pipelines. This is Reuters. This guy, Fatih Birol, head of the International Energy Agency, said it was very obvious who was behind it They did not say who it was. Allegations of Russian responsibility, which this Kremlin said that they're stupid. The Russian officials have said Washington had a motive that wants to sell more liquefied natural gas energy to Europe. President Vladimir Putin said on Friday the United States and its allies blew up Nord Stream. Sanctions were not enough for Anglo-Saxons, they really sabotage. So Putin's blaming the U.S. for blowing up Nord Stream, and the White House has dismissed this accusation that it was responsible. Biden said on Friday, Nord Stream was deliberate act of sabotage. So why sabotage a pipeline? Why would you do this? Here's the explanation. It says they're apparently speaking that Russia has also built up considerable capacity in the water. It says Russia can intimidate Europeans through an act of sabotage because if they're able to blow up these pipelines in the Baltic seabed, they could do that as well through the new pipeline. So Russia, by blowing up their own pipeline, would lose leverage it has over Europe, right? The whole plan was for the U.S. was concerned about Europe's dependence on Russia's gas. So to alleviate U.S. concerns, Russia's enemy, the U.S., Russia would blow up its pipeline? I don't know, guys. I mean, how is that possible? Why would Russia blow that up? It doesn't make any sense to me. It's interesting, right? I'm going to stop presenting this, and I'll play you something about Nord Stream. All right, here we go.
If Russia invades, that means tanks or troops crossing the border of Ukraine again. Then there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it.
How will you do that exactly, since the project and control of the project is within Germany's control?
We will, I promise you, we'll be able to do it.
I promise you we'll be able to do it. All right. That's Biden. Let's go to what Newland had to say about Nord Stream.
With regard to Nord Stream 2, we continue to have very strong and clear conversations with our German allies, and I want to be clear with you today. If Russia invades Ukraine, one way or another, Nord Stream 2 will not move forward.
So, did Russia explode their own pipeline? What are we doing here, guys? Really? Nord Stream 2. So there's some curious things going on. We can get into why did Russia really invade Ukraine? Was it really that tyrannical power, hunger for power, insatiable appetite for power, or are they trying to shut down a country that's in cahoots with the U.S.? And that's correct. Is that a possibility? Well, there's been talk about biolab in Ukraine, and let's just go through some of that interesting information. So there's, I'll try to make it as simple as I can. There's U.S. documents that show that they are supporting. The U.S. actually does have financial support for laboratory research in the Ukraine. And I'll find, let's see, this is here. Okay, here we go. All right. This one might be a little harder to see, but maybe here, I'll show you this one. I'm showing a lot of information here. All right. This screen here. Okay. Right here in this, what is this here? This is the Pentagon's website statement on U.S. biological activities in the former Soviet Union. This is a press release. This is a fact sheet from the WMD is a threat. The WMD threat reduction efforts with Ukraine, Russia, and other former Soviet Union countries. Now I want to show you here. This is in June of 2023. Right here, this document. So the United States has also worked collaboratively. This is the United States document. Has worked collaboratively to improve Ukraine's biological safety, security, and disease surveillance for both human and animal health, providing support to 46 peaceful Ukrainian laboratories, health facilities, and disease diagnostic sites over the last 2 decades. So for 20 years, the U.S. has been working collaboratively to improve Ukraine's biological safety. Collaborative programs have focused on improving public health and agricultural safety measures at the nexus of non-proliferation. So for people who say there's no U.S. partnerships or funding or anything of laboratories in Ukraine, this is a U.S. document that is a press release come out from the United States that says that there are laboratories in the U.S. funding. So what's going on with the invasion of Ukraine? There's a couple of questions that we're kind of going through and asking myself, and I'm going to make this a sort of transition to a spiritual thing here. But key questions about the U.S.'s dealings with Ukraine. Why was the war commissioned by the Pentagon while the subject matter really did not correspond to the current problems of public health care in Ukraine? So why the Pentagon commission work that had nothing to do with the current healthcare problems in Ukraine? I'll give you some resources to look that up. There was participation of U.S. military officials in biological research in Ukraine, and it was actually carried out under conditions of secrecy with restricted access of Ukrainian professionals to information and facilities. There were also pathogenic microorganisms, potential agents of biological weapons and biomaterials of Ukrainian citizens exported from the country without clearly declared purposes. So why did the U.S. and Ukraine obscure the military biological cooperation in international courts under the Biological and Toxic Weapons Convention, BTWC, while the U.S. has been blocking the development of its verification mechanism since 2001? And going back to Newland, why was she so concerned about the possibility of the activities held by the U.S. Defense Department of Ukraine and the materials in the biolaboratories taken over by Russian specialists? So there was, in some documents you see, there was a lot of concern about Russia taking over some of the biolaboratories in Ukraine. So some things you'll look at in the sources show that Russia has a very vested interest in some of the dealings that are happening in Ukraine. Not sure how far we got over all of this, but you can definitely see from some of the things we looked at here that the U.S. has a very vested interest in the way things play out in the Ukraine. And this is way, way before any invasion from Russia. And I'll say this, I think when it comes to the things that are going on in Ukraine, there's a lot of fear going on. People are scared. When I was talking to Executive Dan, when we first asked him to come on and talk about Ukraine, he was saying that he's scared of Russia, and people are scared of Russia. And I think there's definitely an element of fear that goes into some of the things that we've seen. Well, look, God has not given us a spirit of fear. He's given one of power, love, and sound mind. That's 2 Timothy 1:7. So there's definitely a propagation of fear that wants to keep people in fear. And why would anyone want to keep people in fear? Because statistics will tell you that when people are in fear, they're much more likely to concede and accept control and accept the sacrifice of certain freedoms they didn't have before, right? There's fear. We've seen that in a lot of the narratives that are going on right now. I think this is no different. I think there's a lot of complex things that are going on in Ukraine and Russia. I think that there's more than meets the eye. I don't think Putin is a saint. I don't think that that he obviously he and Russia and the United States are enemies. So I think he does a lot of things that are very bad, right? But is it what we're seeing? Is it the narrative that we're being fed? So I've covered this certain topics, and I'll kind of go back through them. U.S. involvement in Ukraine, the color revolution, these think tanks, the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines, the biolabs, all these things that are going on in Ukraine that you don't really hear much about. I think probably the most salient are the think tanks, right? There's a plan that was devised before this war was even considered. And we're seeing these things play out. How can these things be written and published years in advance of when these things actually happen? The strategies. And so there's U.S. involvement in meddling in the affairs of Ukraine, and you just kind of ask yourself, why? Is it what we're hearing? Are we really not even involved with this thing? Is Russia just pushing money to Ukraine for their aid? Whose bank account is all this aid going to? Where's it going? What's it doing? And where's the accountability for this money? Meanwhile, you have so many people suffering over here in this country, or aiding Ukraine. And the Ukrainian people there's good people in Ukraine, right? There's very legitimate good people that are suffering. But what's going on with those in government? What's really behind a lot of these things? Just questions to ask. I just want to encourage you. It seems to be some very spooky things. So for October 31st, again, it's probably appropriate to talk about these spooky things, right? And there's some interesting things going on in Ukraine. So I encourage you to go a little bit more past the mainstream narrative, major media, the things that you read, and dig a little deeper and research for yourself. I didn't do a very good job of explaining a lot of these things. I want to do these sort of political breakdowns very often. And I definitely learn from the experience, and I got myself jumping up all the time. But there's things out there that are worth looking into for sure. And so I try to give you tangible things that you heard with the Nord Stream 1 and 2, the explosions of those pipelines, the color revolution information, the local activities with the EU and Ireland, and then what's up with the Poroshenko threats? What's up with Ireland wanting to get Biden involved with some of the things that happened during that time in Ukraine with the Russian boxing and things like that. So it's interesting, and I'd love to hear your comments. I haven't seen any comments. I know this is it's pretty intense stuff, and so I just encourage you to just think about why would these things be happening? What's really behind it? I really think there's fear, which propagates control, and there's certain people that want to control the earth. And I'll tell you one thing: God gave man dominion over everything that grows and moves on this earth. And that was in Genesis. But there's one exception: man does not, and has never been given dominion by God over other men. So that's a demonic scheme. And if you don't see it, you don't see that that's happening, that man is wanting to control other men. Is happening. Unfortunately, it looks like it's happening from my own country. Why is it happening? What's going on? Are we really trying to aid? Are we trying to follow some of the recommendations from groups that might not have the American people's best interest in hand, or the Ukrainian people's best interest in hand? I'll leave it with that. Bless you. Thank you for watching. And there's a lot going on with this. But please leave your comments. Let me know what you think, and tell me what's really behind some of the things that I've shown you today. I really like to know, because I'm not even close to an expert, but I'm willing to unpack them best I can how this is important what to look into, because things look a little bit fishy to me. And so I encourage you again to research for yourself. So anyway, everybody have a blessed night. We'll talk to you next time.